Once a lady who was about 79 years old accused me of being an OXXO NPC because she saw me standing at the register and she said to me very seriously,
"Excuse me, young man, are you an NPC?"
And I was left processing like a printer without ink because I was looking at the gum, the cashier, the line, and my brain had already short-circuited. And I said, "Excuse me?" But the lady points at me and says,
"Well, he's there, standing still with the same dumb look on his face, not blinking like a store mannequin."
And me, out of panic, I blurted out, "Thank you, come again," as if I were the cashier, and I left without buying anything. Since that day, I'm an NPC at OXXO. One time I made a fool of myself in the supermarket line because a lady behind me tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Excuse me, young man." And I turned around with a grumpy face, already ready to argue like I didn't do anything, ma'am, just let me go. But the lady just looks at me and picks up a coin from the floor and says,
"You dropped this."
So I just froze like my soul had been slapped. I apologized 3 times in a row and everyone heard everything. So out of embarrassment, I said, "I'll pay for your cart, ma'am." And the lady said, "Really?" And I was like, "Yes." And because of a damn coin and my sick imagination, I spent my whole paycheck at the supermarket out of paranoia.
I'm crazy. I'm crazy.
One time, my dad, my brother, and I thought that some sharks were gonna eat us and we were gonna be gone forever. Because we got on the banana boat at the beach in Mazatlan. But it was the first time we did it, and they took us way too far from the shore. So I asked the man in charge,
"Excuse me, aren't there sharks?"
and he says to me, "Yes, there are, but don't worry, they already ate a kid a while ago." And I was like,
"Oh, thank goodness."
but then this son of a gun says to me, "Oh, but the ones you really have to worry about are the barracudas, those haven't eaten yet." And well, thank God nothing happened. The good thing is that it was fun.
I love you, God. I love you, God. I trust in you. Jesus, I trust in you. Jesus, I love you. I love you.
One time when I went to the movies with my friends, the power went out right at the most intense scene of the movie. Then we all started screaming like a bunch of turkeys, but to top it off, some crazy guy threw nachos from above because he was upset. But that stuff landed right on my head, cheese and all, so I got really pissed, stood up and yelled, "Who was the idiot that threw this crap at me?" And then this bald, jacked guy like 5 meters tall stood up and said, "It was me," and I yelled back, "Oh, thanks, because I didn't buy the combo." And all freaked out, I sat back down in my chair without saying a word.
I feel sorry for the next guy who dares to look at me. How about this guy?
Once when I was at a party with my cousins Chicharen and Tizok, those two geniuses almost made my head explode because they told me, "If you shake a Coke, put a couple of Mentos in your mouth, open it quickly and chug it, nothing happens because it's just a controlled reaction." And I, trusting their PhDs, did it, but when I did, the Coke exploded like a volcano erupting. My cheeks puffed up like a skinny pig. Tizok thought I was going to die and that idiot Chicharin almost peed himself laughing. And the worst part is that now they call me the failed experiment. One time when I was on vacation, they arrested a gringo at the Barcelo Hotel and took him to jail for ruining some people and some hotel furniture. My girlfriend and I were just waiting for a bus to our room, but this clueless gringo wanted to leave and go to another part of the hotel. But then a bus came by and the gringo wanted to get on, but it was the driver's last stop, so he refused to take him and the gringo got pissed off and kicked the bus. And he started peeing in the street in front of everyone, and the hotel manager saw him and called the police. So the silly little gringo freaked out and started crying, saying, no, I have money, I give you all my money." But that didn't matter and they still took him to jail.
Hey, I love you from prison.
Once when I was 5 years old, my parents and I almost had an accident on the highway because of me, and we almost went with Mama Coco. Because we were on our way to Campeche and my dad said, "The boy is all alone back there, let's put him in the front." So they grabbed me and put me between the front seats. But since I'm hyperactive, I grabbed it and said, "Horsey!" And I got on the gear shift and we were going about 130. So then, with my butt, I accidentally put it in reverse and the truck almost went off the road. If it weren't for my dad, who's like Toretto, because if not, vroom vroom. One time, my dad thought the plane we were on was crashing and he made a scene on the plane. because the engine looked like it was smoking and turning black. Then he whispered to me, "Look at the wing of the plane, it's smoking." But a dramatic lady with bionic hearing who was behind us heard what my dad said and started screaming. She began alarming everyone, claiming the plane would crash, and ultimately, due to the chaos, the flight attendant had to explain that the supposed smoke was actually just a shadow from the sun and the clouds, and that's why it looked black. One time, my parents almost became criminals wanted by the police. They were about to be taken to jail because we were in a restaurant. We were watching the final of a match between America and Cruz Azul, and then at the end of the game, America won. My dad, really excited, started shouting and celebrating, and he left the restaurant with my mom without paying. So my brother and I stayed at the table like, "Aren't you going to pay the bill?" And then they realized and came back because they had forgotten to pay out of excitement.
Ah, well, goodbye, master.
One time, an old lady thought my girlfriend was pregnant, and honestly, I got scared because I thought to myself, old ladies sometimes know things. But actually, she thought that because we were at my grandma's birthday party, and then my aunt came over and said to my girlfriend,
Sweetie, do you want an alcoholic pina colada?
but she replied,
No, thank you. I can't have that right now.
But next to her was Mrs. Chinchita, and she said, "Oh, we're expecting a new baby. We have to prepare the baby shower." But actually, my girlfriend couldn't drink alcohol because she had taken some medicine, not because she was pregnant.
No, she couldn't.
One time, my mom beat up my brother El Tecolote in the supermarket in front of everyone because he did something really stupid. He wanted to test if the emergency speakers worked. So we were in the checkout area when he saw the loudspeaker microphone and shouted through the whole supermarket.
Mom, I pooped myself and there's no toilet paper.
Then people turned around and the employees were in shock, and my mom, red with anger, grabbed him by the ears and kicked him out of the supermarket. But the worst part is that Tecolote didn't even need to go to the bathroom, he just did it out of curiosity.
Call the police! They're killing me!
One time I almost fainted from fright when I found the biggest spider I'd ever seen in my life because I calmly walked into a gas station bathroom to take a leak. But when I was halfway through, I heard a strange noise on the ceiling. I turned to look and it was a huge spider, the size of a 4-year-old baby, and I was so scared that my poor stream even stopped. So, gathering my courage, I finished as fast as I could and ran out of the bathroom like crazy. Then I ran into the janitor and told her, "There's an evil entity in the bathroom in the form of a spider," and she just replied all chill,
Oh, Bobby, that's my pet.
and I was like, "Hey, but that thing could eat a kid." And she told me no, that it was tame, but I don't believe her at all. One time, when my cousin Tizok was training for soccer, he got robbed on the minibus because he had gone to practice around 3 in the afternoon. But when he was going back home, he took the minibus at 7 at night. So, at one point, 2 guys got on the minibus and said, "You know the drill, folks, cell phones and wallets, and if anyone looks at me, I'll mess them up." And well, poor Tizok had no choice but to hand over his poor Nokia that he had just gotten from Koppel, which he'd only had for 2 weeks, and they took the 100 pesos he had in his wallet. One time, my poor butt was on fire and smoking when I went to take a dump because when I was 11 years old, I ate 5 bags of Takis chips. I didn't realize that the real moment of truth would come when it was finally time to take a dump. Once I was in the bathroom, I felt like dying, and my mom even called to me from the living room.
Son, what's burning in the bathroom?
And I told her, "Mom, help, help, I ate 5 bags of Takis," and she said, "Who told you to do that, kid?" That's why I told you not to eat them, and honestly, in the end, that was the last time I ate Takis because I think I was traumatized.
Call the police! They're killing me!
In elementary school, my friend Lucho once shouted loudly when he saw the teacher wasn't coming.
Yes, the dumb teacher didn't show up.
And we all burst out laughing like never before. But suddenly we felt a stare piercing the back of our necks. We turned around slowly, and there was the teacher, arms crossed, staring at us, and she looked really angry. And my friend, pale as a sheet, said,
Good morning.
and the teacher, acting all crazy, said,
Go say good morning to the principal too, sweetie.
and my friend Luchito got nailed. One time, my dad accidentally scammed a claw machine because he put in 5 pesos, but the sneaky thing didn't give him any credit. So my dad, in ninja mode, gives the machine a devilish smack and suddenly it makes a sound and starts spitting out coins like it switched to casino mode, and people started looking at us, and I, all nervous, just pretended to be clueless while picking up the coins. And in the end, the machine gave out 91 pesos, but as we were leaving, my dad said this wasn't theft, it was divine justice with exact change.
No, it's not stealing if you take it quickly.
One time my girlfriend was banned from a restaurant for being very clumsy and messy because we were eating some sandwiches, but when we finished eating she wanted to wash her hands, so she asked me,
Where's the bathroom, babe?
and I pointed out that it was at the back to the right as always, but instead of going into the bathroom she went into a small kitchen and started washing her hands over clean dishes and even started gargling, and then she spit it out all over the clean dishes. But during all that I hadn't realized the stupid thing she was doing, so I said to her, not that one, the one over there. And then she says to me,
Oh, that's why this bathroom seemed odd.
and in the end the manager found out and we got kicked out.
Definitely, I almost got it right.
Once, when I was at a taco place, a waiter stole my fake iPhone 13 that I had bought on AliExpress and swapped it out without me noticing. With an Android phone that had like 5 cameras and probably cost more than my fake iPhone. Because I used to want an iPhone, but I couldn't afford a real one, so I decided to buy a fake one. So, when I got to the taco place, I saw how the waiter kept looking at my phone a lot, but I didn't care because it was fake, so I left it on the table. And when he brought us the tacos, I guess he switched my phone for the one with 5 cameras without me noticing, and then when I got home, I took out my phone and saw that it had 5 cameras and that it was different. So, without meaning to, I scammed the thieving waiter. One time at Christmas, my mom decided it was a good idea to make a giant turkey and trust my little cousin Tizok to help. And everything was going fine until Tizok said, I'm going to give the turkey more flavor with this syringe. And I thought, this guy is doing a lab experiment. I'm scared of what might happen. Then suddenly, boom, the turkey exploded like a firecracker and I ended up with stew in my hair and on my face. But my mom comes back into the kitchen and screams,
What did you do to the turkey, you sons of your beautiful blessed mother?
and Tisok, all nervous, says, I just gave it a lot of love, aunt, and flavor, but I went a little overboard. Subscribe if you like the story.
Bounce when she walk, yeah. Bounce when she walk, bounce when she walk.
Once at Christmas, when my little cousin Macario was 7 years old, he destroyed the Christmas magic with something crazy he said because everything was going fine. Macario was happy with his new little car and we were all smiling until Macario said to my aunt,
Mom, is the neighbor Santa Claus? Or why did he give you a little car for me?
and my aunt, redder than the ornaments on the tree, said, No, Macario, don't say that. But he insisted and said,
Yes, I saw you when you took it out of his car. But Santa uses a sleigh.
and my aunt just wanted the ground to swallow her up while my uncle said, We're going to have a talk, Erica. And in the end, that night was the most awkward but funniest Christmas night of my life.
You embarrassed us.
Once when I was in middle school, I made 30 classmates fail because I had found the perfect method to become a millionaire. Because I started doing homework for hire for 200 pesos, so I became popular, and the next day 30 kids came to me saying, For tomorrow, please. I mean, on the second day I had made 6,000 pesos, but the problem was I couldn't handle 30 assignments at the same time, so I hired my cousin Tisok, El Panzas, and El Sardina as employees and everything was fine. Until the next day they turned in the homework and the teacher picks up an assignment and says, Who among you wrote that photosynthesis is when the plant takes photos? I had to give the money back, but Tisok had already spent it on chips. Once they nearly kicked me out of the bank for shouting the ATM was giving away money. As a kid, I honestly thought I'd found the perfect hack for infinite cash. I used to think the ATM was like a magic machine. You put your card in and it gave you money. So I go to the bank with my dad, I see him take out bills, and super excited I shout at the top of my lungs, Dad, put the card in again so it gives you another prize. And there was an awkward, horrible silence. Even the security guard gave me a really nasty look. So my dad covered my mouth and I still asked him, Why don't you want more money? In the end, he explained to me that it was his money and that the security guard cracked up laughing at my silly comments. One time, when I was 11 years old, I ordered a family-sized extra jumbo pizza, size XXXL, just for myself because I had sworn that day I was going to eat like a king. But the people at the pizzeria trolled me because when the pizza arrived, I opened the box and it didn't have any cheese. I thought it was a joke, but I checked 3 times and nothing, just dough with tomato. So I called the pizzeria outraged and said, Hey, what kind of pizza is this? A Pomodoro UFO? The guy seriously replies, "Kid, are you sure? Maybe it's just the powdered milk upsetting you?" And I was so pissed off I almost wanted to kick the guy. But the good thing is that in the end they gave me a coupon for 500 bucks. One time my dad thought the washing machine was going to explode and that we were going to lose the house because it started sounding like a NASA rocket taking off. So he ran out with the fire extinguisher in hand and shouted, "Everybody get away from the yard, this thing is going to blow." And he even called the neighbor just in case, and my mom was already praying, thinking our house was going to catch fire. So we approached carefully, ready to evacuate the house. But it turns out my brother Moharin had put a huge rock in the washing machine to see if it would turn into gold. And after that, my dad almost put Moharin up for adoption. Once when I was in middle school, the strictest teacher expelled my friend Jorgito from school for slamming the door in his face. He was on his way to art class, but the teacher wasn't showing up and there were only 10 minutes left before class ended. So we started playing by pushing the door so no one could get in. Then at that moment, Chuchito came out and we shouted to Jorgito,
Push, push, don't let him in!
and Jorgito with all his might was pushing as if he were defending the gates of heaven. But then we saw that Jorgito was losing and a face peeked in from outside the door, and it was the teacher with his glasses crooked and looking like an angry bull. But Jorgito kept pushing with all his strength and we shouted at him, "Abort mission, abort mission!" And Jorgito goes, looks up, and when he saw the teacher's face, he even fainted.
Push! Push!
Once my friend Chilaquil became the most famous person in the history of my neighborhood because that bro was really fast like Flash. But one day he lost his mind and said, "I bet I can catch one of Mrs. Chana's chickens in less than a minute." So we chose the fugitive chicken as his opponent, the one that no one had ever been able to catch. So we set the timer, let the chicken loose, and Chilaquil started running like it was the Piston Cup, but the chicken dodged him like it was nothing. Until Chilaquil made a dive worthy of the Olympic Games and landed straight into an elote stand. And that's where he lost his teeth and the chicken got away, but he was left covered in cheese and mayonnaise, poor guy. Once when it was Christmas, a loud boom 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 started going off in the yard like someone was shooting up the neighborhood. And we all thought it was the end of the world, but it turned out to be Panzas trying to force open a present. Then the box burst open and toys, candies, and a doll that was screaming "Go" flying out.
Merry Christmas, you bastards!
As if it were possessed, and my grandma Chona crossed herself 14 times. My mom grabbed the broom as a weapon, and Moharin threw himself on the floor to protect his new skateboard. And since that day, that gift is officially known as the Nuclear Christmas Piñata.
Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas! Merry Christmas!
Once when it was Christmas, we had the most epic posada ever in the neighborhood, and everything was going perfectly. Until Panzas got the idea to use sparklers to set the mood. But when he lit them, a spark fell on the tablecloth and started the Christmas fire. Everyone was running, Tizak was throwing water from a barrel, Moharin was defending the punch table like it was a medieval fortress, and my mom was putting her buñuelos in the fridge like they were a national treasure. But the good thing is that in the end, my grandpa Perejilo showed up and put everything out with a sneeze. But that scare was etched into our memories, and since that day we really think twice about inviting Pinche Panzas or not. One time my girlfriend got really mad at me because we had bought a refrigerator, but that thing had a factory sticker and I ended up ruining the refrigerator because she told me,
Don't remove it! I'll do it since you don't know how!
and I replied, no baby, you always want to do everything, now it's my turn, but since I'm clumsy and have man hands, I break everything. I started to remove the sticker with some scissors and obviously I was scratching all the surface of the brand new fridge. And when she saw what I was doing, she just stared at me like this.
What are you doing? That's why I told you I was going to do it, tiny dick!
One time, because of me, a 4-year-old kid pooped his pants because I gave him a bottle of water since he was thirsty, but the bottle was too heavy and he couldn't hold it. He kept saying it's heavy, but I thought he wanted strawberry ice cream since the ice cream man was passing by. But then in the end, he dropped the bottle of water on the ground and it started to smell foul. And then his mom realized he had pooped himself from straining so hard. Poof! No way, Diablo! One time, my buddy Brainiac got scared to death and thought he was going to meet his great-grandparents. Because we were playing with a water Orby where the first one to get it in the other's mouth would win, but then it was my turn and I got it right in his mouth. But it went too far and he swallowed it. So really worried, he said, "Dude, I'm done for. That thing is going to keep growing in my stomach and I'm going to end up in the cemetery." But obviously those little balls have a growth limit. But just to mess with him, I said, "Oh dude, we better say goodbye because the Grim Reaper's got you now." And he started crying and running around in circles. He was even about to call 911, but in the end I told him it was a lie. One time, my friend El Panzas clogged the toilet so unbelievably badly that when we tried to unclog it, the turd shot out under pressure and stuck to the ceiling. Because that guy, every time he comes to my house, he orders a sandwich the size of a blue whale and eats it all by himself. At night, he always has to go take a dump, and every time he visits, he clogs the toilet. So thank God we almost always managed to unclog it, but there was one day when he ate what 4 Mexican families would eat all by himself, and when he went to take a dump, the toilet was clogged for almost a week. But when we tried to unclog it, we didn't know there was a submarine stuck in the drain, and it ended up sticking to the ceiling from the force it had. One time I caught my brother at night under the blanket reading the Bible in Catholic Doctor Strange mode because I went into his room and saw he was moving his hands really fast under the blanket and with his phone, and I said, "What are you doing, Pope Leo the 14th? And he says, "Pope Leo the 14th, why are you making fun of me? I'm training to be the real demon hunter like Demon Slayer." And I said, "So, do you want to learn the whole Bible in 25 minutes or what?" Because the guy was already practically smoking out of his ears. He said he wanted to see if he could communicate with the Holy Spirit.
Ho, slow down, speedster.
Once when I was a kid, I thought there was a baby jaguar in the OXXO because I saw some spots moving behind the Fanta fridge. And I slowly approached like a National Geographic cameraman to see if it really was, and I yelled, "People at the OXXO, run! There's a wild animal!" So because of me, a lady who was about 99 years old who was next to me fainted because she checked to see if it was real. Then she sees it and confirms, "It's true, oh my god." The cowardly cashier locked himself in the storage room praying since he hadn't signed up to die this way. But then my uncle, Mr. Camaron, comes in with a broomstick, moves the fridge, and it was a really fat cat with a bag of spots stuck to it, and obviously the old lady who had fainted found out. And now, every time I saw her around the OXXO, she would chase me with her cane to hit me on the head. One time, my brother, the macaco, scared me to death and I thought I was going to go to heaven with Chabelo because I had cut my hand with some scissors. So, since I got scared, I yelled for my mom to come help, but Macaco heard me first, so he came to where I was, saw my wound and said, "Look at how the blood is coming out. Your life is going to come out through there. I'll say goodbye to you right now." So I started crying because I didn't want to die, and that damn Macaco, every time I got cut, he would tell me that all my blood was going to come out through that little hole. So I thought that to keep that from happening, I should put my finger on the wound to stop the bleeding.
My God, Lord Salome, I invoke you, angel and warrior father.
One time my mother-in-law embarrassed my girlfriend in front of my parents because my parents and I were having dinner at my in-laws' house. But then at some point, the conversation turned to how my girlfriend used to sleep a lot when she was little. So my girlfriend, trying to defend herself, said to her mom,
Hey mommy, maybe I was sick.
And then my mother-in-law answered in front of everyone, "What you are is lazy, a slob, and a slacker. Sick my foot because even now all you do is sleep." And my girlfriend, out of embarrassment, just covered her face with the tablecloth and almost crawled under the table just to avoid so much shame. One time, my friend Chuleta and I broke his mom's 10,000 peso perfume because he had invited me to his house to play PlayStation. But when we got bored, we started playing with the Nerf guns all over his house. But then Chuleta tripped over his mom's dresser and knocked over the perfume, which I think was called Baccarat, all over the carpet because the cap came off. So he wouldn't get in trouble, I told him, "Dude, fill it up with water so they won't notice." But obviously they noticed because the whole room was filled with the smell of perfume and the perfume itself didn't smell like anything anymore. And in the end, the poor guy was punished and couldn't play PlayStation for 3 months. FF.
Adolf Hitler, 41, 43, Sie weit hinter dem Kampf, Aristoteles.
One time I fought with some guys in a public bathroom because they were taking a dump in the toilet and it smelled really bad. I covered my nose. But just then, one of them came out and saw me with my nose covered and said, "Oh, look at him. Does it smell like roses to you, smartass?" And I said, No, it's because of the other guy whose rotten river stinks." But then the other one comes out with his butt full of tamarind and his pants down because he heard and says, "Are you talking about me, punks?" And I was like, damn, man, what do I say now? But then the dumb guy says, "Well, let's fight like monkeys." And he was about to start throwing his tamarinds at us like a monkey, but as soon as he turned around, the man and I took off.
Run, fatty, run, fatty.
One time my mom thought I was the Antichrist and she was about to give me up for adoption. As far as I remember, one day I was in my room and I was going to go down to the living room, but the stairs didn't have a handrail. So my mom had just set up the nativity scene right under the stairs because Christmas was coming. And then I went and fell from the top of the stairs right on top of the freshly set up nativity scene. My mom came running to see what had happened and saw me rolling around in the nativity scene, and she said to me, Hey, what are you doing? Show some respect. If you keep this up, I'll put you up for adoption." I replied, "Adoption? Forget that. Help me. I think I hurt my knee."
You're really drunk. Really drunk.
One time I ate a tick from my dog and I thought I was going to die because I had let my dog up on my bed. But before that, I had taken him for a walk and a dirty dog came up to sniff his tail. So I think that other dog gave him a tick, and then when I took him out of my room, I saw what looked like a crumb on the bed and I ate it because I had been eating before and I thought it must be a little bit of food that fell on the bed. And since it was kind of dark, I thought it was food, but when I bit into it, it was crunchy and tasted bad. So I turned on the light, took it out of my mouth and saw it wasn't food. Then I searched online, what happens if you eat a tick? And Google had already told me that I was going to meet God. One time it was Christmas, my family set up a giant inflatable reindeer outside the house like a North Pole mascot, but then Taizok came and said the reindeer was hackable. So, the guy hooked up an old remote control he found and bam, the reindeer started spinning like a military helicopter. It knocked over the neighborhood nativity scene, dragged the tree and took down a neighbor dressed as Santa who was selling buñuelos. And everyone was screaming, lights were flying, Panza was recording everything like a war reporter. And from that day on, that decoration was nicknamed the Christmas Apache Reindeer. One time, Santa brought my nephew Vapene a gift. He wanted to try out his new video game because he said it was signed by baby Jesus and that made him invincible. But I knew that if I played with him, he would start crying, so I set it to the easiest mode in the world and he thought it was his natural talent. So every time he killed an enemy, he would shout, "I'm a Christmas legend." But he got intense. He started showing off to the whole family. So I turned off the easy mode without him noticing, and 20 seconds later the enemies destroyed him. His face was so sad that even the tree turned off by itself, and that day he learned that not all Christmas gifts are miracles. One time I got kicked out of a family party because a try-hard aunt pointed at me and shouted,
"Manuel is here, the red flag."
And the whole gathering went, ooh! Even my cousin Tizok pulled out his phone to record like it was a fight. And I turned red in front of everyone because I thought he was exposing me as toxic, unfaithful, manipulative, and even a criminal. So very seriously, I said, "I'm not like that, ma'am." And then everyone stared at me like I had committed a federal crime, but my aunt just laughed. She grabs my pants and pulls off a little red flag that was stuck to my backside from the candy table decorations. And in the end, I was so embarrassed that I ran out saying it wasn't toxic, it was decorative, and I left. One time a little girl almost gave the most fearful teacher in the school a heart attack in front of everyone because right in the classroom she let out a burp, and instead of saying sorry she shouted, "The spirit came out of me," and we all froze like NPCs with no battery. Even my buddy Kalaka made the sign of the cross, and he's not even Catholic, and the teacher, pale as paper, said, "What did you say, girl? What do you mean, the spirit?" And the girl, totally convinced, explained that it came out without warning and stayed in the classroom. But the worst part was the next day, when Miss came in with holy water and sprinkled the classroom like she was fumigating. Since then, that day has been called Exorcism Thursday.
If you didn't fight
Once there was a brown bear that almost died from the cold because the poor thing was born albino and was in the jungle. But one day, a group of rescuers saw him and thought he was a polar bear that had to migrate because of global warming. So the dumb rescuers sedated him and sent him to Antarctica. And when the poor brown bear wakes up, he has no idea what's going on. And the poor thing was about to die of hunger because he didn't know how to hunt since he wasn't in his habitat. So sometime later, other rescuers realized he was an albino brown bear and returned him to the jungle. But the worst part is that then the same rescuers from the beginning thought he had gone back to the jungle, and those idiots took him back to Antarctica again. Let me go! One time my parents almost left me behind in a Walmart because we had gone to the movies to see a horror film where some monsters moved through ventilation ducts in the ceiling. So after the movie ended, we went to the supermarket, but at one point I looked up and there were some ducks that looked exactly like the ones from the movie. And I thought something was going to appear and I was paralyzed with fear. But my parents didn't realize I wasn't with them. So in the end, since I couldn't find them, I had to go with the guy who goes,
Sausage counter, aisle 5.
so he could announce over the speakers that a dirty kid was lost.
At that moment, Cell felt true terror.
One time I played a prank on my brother telling him his Minecraft house had exploded, the one he spent about 5 months building. In the end, I got scolded because the guy was taking a shower. So I yelled at him, "That TNT sounds great in your house." And he says to me from the bathroom,
No, don't blow up my house.
and I told him it was too late because I was already doing it. Then he ran out of the bathroom crying to tell on me to my mom, but in reality I hadn't even touched a single block of his house. But even so, my mom scolded me and punished me for making him cry.
People only understand after an ass kicking.
One time in the middle of the night, hunger hit me and I almost didn't make it until breakfast. So I snuck into the kitchen like a ninja to steal a taco my brother had left from dinner. So I heated it up, and just as I was about to take a bite, I hear, "That's mine, little dude." And I got so scared I jumped and dropped my taco because my dumb brother showed up out of nowhere. So I answered him, "It was yours." I wiped it off the floor with my shirt and ate it. And my brother looked at me with eyes full of pity and disgust, so he didn't even do anything to me. And the important thing is that that night, I won the taco war.
That was mine.
Once when I was 11 years old, I was invited to a party because it was my friend El Panzas' birthday. And when it was time for the piñata, we all started taking turns hitting it. But then El Panzas' uncle says, "My turn, kids." And with the first hit, he knocks it down and the piñata falls to the ground with all its candy. I spot my dad already in the car having come to pick me up. So I grab the piñata and run, and I tell my dad, go, I've got candy for a month." But my dad didn't drive off and made me return the piñata, and El Panzas never invited me to his party again.
If you already know how I get, why do you invite me?
One time at Christmas, I got a gift that changed my life, but not for the better. Because I open my gifts and I see an Xbox 360 box, and I happily tell my mom, "Chachi mom, it's what I wanted." And I quickly opened the box to see what was inside, and it was soap and shampoo. And crying, I say,
"Is this a gift or a punishment? What did I do wrong?"
And he answered me that it was because I was dirty and because I only took a bath a few times during the whole year, and this was the only way to see if I would stop being dirty. And in the end, they did give me the Xbox, and it was an unforgettable Christmas because now that I had the Xbox, I bathed even less. Subscribe and tell me a Christmas story in the comments. Once I thought my dad had gone crazy because every time he had a puppy, he would pick it up, lift it, and say, "Your name is Mickey." And the poor newborn puppy would just stay like this, like, "What's going on? I just want some chicken." So one day I go and ask him, "Hey dad, why do you do that with the puppy?" He starts laughing and tells me, "It's so he learns his name, son." But every time he did that, I would just see how poor Mickey's little neck would go like this. The good thing is that Mickey learned his name really well. One time, a drunk guy from the neighborhood that we called Condorito almost had a firework explode on his head. He was about to go join El Chavo del Ocho. But honestly, he was really lucky because an uncle grabbed them and said, "Hey guys, I bought these fireworks that shoot up into the sky, but I don't know how to light them." And Condorito grabs them and says, "No problem, boss. We'll light them right now. I'm an expert at this." But it was a lie. He wasn't an expert at all because he almost blew his head off. When he lit it, he put his face right by the barrel, exactly where the fireworks would come out. But his buddy, the Chilango, who was another drunk guy, noticed and pulled him back so he'd move his head. And if it hadn't been for him, Condorito would have gone straight to heaven, literally. Once when I was in elementary school, my notebooks were full of the little parrot stamp, and my mom would scold me because I was always chatting with my buddies Panza and Kalaka during class, and the teacher was always, "Shut up, you little devils!" But since we wouldn't be quiet, Panza, Kalaka, and I would get the little parrot stamp, and they said that if we collected 53 of those stamps, we'd be suspended for 3 days. But the good thing is, I only got up to 52 stamps. But there was one time when I got 58 stamps. They suspended me for 3 days, and my mom made me sell bread outside our house because if I wasn't going to study, she was going to make me work. But the good thing is, I earned 1,000 pesos. One time some girls played a prank on me saying they had seen my diapers so I wouldn't wet the bed when I was 12 years old. And in the end, I started crying. Because some annoying little girls, daughters of a friend of my mom, came to my house and I told them,
"Hey, you bratty girls, don't go to the room downstairs because I'm hiding something."
But still, how dumb of me. Because the more I told them not to go downstairs, the more those little girls wanted to go, and I hid my diapers downstairs because supposedly no one was supposed to go down there. But the girls didn't listen to me and went downstairs, and supposedly they saw what I was hiding, and I went crying to tell on them to my mom. But I think they trolled me and actually didn't see anything because they never told me what they saw. One time there was a man who thought I was mentally challenged and he stared at me weirdly because I was in the supermarket eating an ice cream. And during all that time I hadn't spoken and my tongue was frozen. So when I was looking for some canned pineapples, I went and asked the man, "Good afternoon. Do you know where the canned pineapples are?" And in my head I was like, why am I talking like this? What happened to me? But the man stared at me weird and said, "Get out of here, you damn kid. Damn, what a jerk. Go study!" Once when I was a kid, I used to put my dog's eye gunk in my eyes because my grandma told me that dogs could see ghosts and invisible people. So I wanted to see them too. I grabbed my dog and said, "Mickey, come here, give me your eye gunk." I put it on but saw nothing. So I said, "Oh, I guess I have to wait for it to work," but it never worked. And I ended up getting an eye infection for not having any brains and believing it. One time I got really worried because I thought I had cancer. Because whenever I took a shower, my hair would fall out and stick to the towel when I dried it. So I said, "Man, I'm done for," all because I kept eating Takis. But since I thought I was about to go be with God, I told the girl I liked that I loved her and asked her to be my girlfriend, but she friend-zoned me. I just said it was fine since I was about to meet El Chavo del Ocho and his neighborhood anyway. But in the end, I just had a problem with alopecia and at school they made fun of me. De mí.
¿Quién puta le importa, pedazo de puta escoria de mierda malparido de la verga? De seguro cuando el doctor te vio.
One time I played a prank on my brother, telling him that his Minecraft house had exploded, the one he spent about 5 months building. And in the end, I was the one who got scolded, because the guy was taking a shower, so I yelled, "Dynamite sounds great in your house." And he says from the bathroom,
No, don't blow up my house.
And I told him it was too late because I was already doing it. So he ran out of the bathroom crying to tell on me to my mom. But in reality, I hadn't touched a single block of his house. But even so, my mom scolded me and punished me for making him cry.
People only learn when you beat it into them.
One time my friend El Cubito was about to eat rat poison at school because that guy spent all his time playing Minecraft. And we used to call him a rat boy. So, fed up, one day he brought rat poison and in front of everyone he put it on his food to prove to us that nothing would happen to him because he wasn't a rat. But just as he was about to take a bite and put it in his mouth, my friend Solovino came and kicked his sandwich so he wouldn't take the bite and go meet God. One time my friend Requeson spilled 2 boiling Marussians on his leg because we were at recess. So he ran to the cafeteria to get 2 shrimp Maruchans with chili, but then when he was coming back he was running. Then he tripped, but he spilled all the super hot water on his leg. And to make things worse, that day he was wearing shorts. And well, my friends and I saw how his skin was turning white like cheese because of the heat, and the poor guy was just screaming. And he had to take off his shorts and his boxers, and everyone saw his junk. Once, when I was a teenager and went to high school, they called me Nescafe because I was covered in nothing but zits. And before I turned 15, I had a face as smooth as a baby's bottom. But after a while, I started getting not just pimples, but erupting volcanoes on my face because my whole family has oily skin and that makes acne come out more easily on the face. One day at school, where we gave each other nicknames and joked around with friends, they called me Nescafe, but I didn't understand why, and I thought it was because I was good in the morning, but that wasn't the reason. The good thing is that I'm not going to shrivel up like a raisin so quickly.
Wprost the toxic I'll beat up so rude
One time I couldn't hold back the urge to go pee and I had to do it in a public park, but damn, a cop showed up because I've always been a big peer. So that day we were far from any bathroom and I decided to go by a little tree. But then I heard a voice behind me saying, "Hey kid, what are you doing?" But I didn't stop my stream. So I turned around to see who had spoken to me and I peed all over the leg of someone wearing black pants. But as I looked up, I realized it was a cop. The good thing is they didn't take me to jail because I was 10 years old. One time when I was 12 years old, I was left alone with my dog Mickey. He made me believe he had turned into a narwhal because he started walking on 2 legs and kept looking at me weird. But the thing is, 3 days before, I had seen that if a dog walked on 2 legs, it was because a narwhal was possessing it. And that those dogs would take children to the hills and they would never come back. So scared to death, I searched the internet for remedies against witchcraft and I found crack an egg on the head of the animal or person, so I grabbed an egg and cracked it on my dog's head. But then afterwards I realized that what he wanted was a piece of ham I had in my shirt from breakfast and that he actually wasn't a narwhal at all. Once, when I was 13 years old, I thought a giant salamander had come to wake me up in my room to go to school because one day my dad came to wake me up at around 6 in the morning to go to school. But before that, he had taken a shower with water as cold as Antarctica. So when he came to my room, he said, "Wake up to go to school," and he touched my arm. But since I felt something cold and wet, I reacted like this because, well, I was warm and under my Incredibles blanket. So when I opened my eyes, I saw him and screamed because I thought King Salamander had come to my room to eat me. One time my friend Chichimeka ate about 5 pieces of my dog's kibble because we had a competition to see who got fewer kills in Call of Duty. And whoever lost had to eat dog food, so I won, and Chichimeka didn't want to eat Mickey's pedigree kibble. But well, he had to go get some kibble, and when he came back to the room, he put them in his mouth and started chewing them, and honestly, I was dying of laughter. So I asked him, "What do they taste like?" And he tells me they taste like food of the gods and angels. But then my little dog Mickey came into the house and Chichimeka says, "Look, he came in to look for his kibble." One time my mom was afraid of rats and one day she almost had a heart attack because she had a cat named Atun, and one day Atun caught a rat about the size of the ones in New York. So that guy took it to my mom in bed and put it on her stomach, but my mom was asleep and didn't feel it. But when she woke up, she saw the huge animal on top of her and started screaming all over the house. And the worst part is that she was blaming me because she thought I was the one who put it there. But in the end, I told her it was the cat. We gave my mom some coke to calm her after the scare. One time when there was no food at home, my dad ate a kilo of my dog's kibble and my mom saw him. Because my crazy dad eats anything, and his guts are already tough from all the nonsense he eats. He even sometimes eats those tacos they sell 15 for 5 pesos. And that day there was no food at home and he was really hungry, but he told me he was too lazy to go buy food. And at that moment he saw Mickey's kibble and said to me, "Give me a kilo," and he ate it. Once when my cousin Chuchito, it was his birthday, they threw him a party there in the neighborhood. But everything got ruined because in the end, about 10 drunk guys crashed the party. Because of my uncle, Rubenchas, and then the police had to come because Chuchito had his Buzz Lightyear 10th birthday party. But when we were about to cut the cake, my uncle Rubenchas said, "Can I invite some buddies? They're chill." But his buddies were all the drunks from the neighborhood. And once they arrived, one of the drunks in the middle of the chaos ended up on top of the cake. Another one wanted to take the piñata for his kid and others were peeing on people. So in the end, they had to call the cops to get them out and poor Chuchito's party was ruined. One time when I was a kid, I almost set my house on fire because I was playing Xbox. My mom left the house and told me, son, in about 20 minutes, turn off the stove for the chicken, don't forget. But since I was so hooked on playing, I just said yes, but honestly I had no idea what she had told me, so I started playing. But after 2 hours, it started to smell like smoke and I thought, oh, it must be the crazy neighbor burning trash. So I didn't pay attention. But then after 3 hours, my mom came home. She checks the pot with the poor chicken and sees that the chicken had shrunk and was black. But then she tried to grab it to take it out of the pot and it disintegrated because it was so burnt. One time, I almost blinded my friend El Panzas because I brought a green laser to school that I had bought at the fair. So I said to Panzas, hey man, this laser is really powerful. And he says, how much will you give me if you point it at my eye? And I was like, what's up with this guy? And I said, Panzas, if you want money, just ask for it. And he told me no because he doesn't beg. Then he said, if you give me $100, I'll let you point it at my eye. Well, I was just a kid and I said, okay. But Panzas wore glasses, so the beam was even stronger and I pointed it at him. But in the end, afterwards, he told me he saw a black spot in the center of his eye for more than a week. One time when I was on vacation, a panther almost ate me and my family. We had gone to a beach to see the flamingos, but they had to take us by boat to the place where they were. My mom was really scared because she's afraid of falling into the sea and drowning since she can't swim. And when we got to the flamingos' habitat, we saw how the boat driver started to get scared because the water level was dropping. So the boat was going to get stuck and there wouldn't be any way for someone to come get us. And a lady who lived nearby said, oh God, we're going to be panther dinner because they come out every night. And the worst part was, it was already getting dark. But the good thing is that by God's grace, the water rose again and we left. No! Once when I was a child, I kicked my mom in the belly and she was pregnant. Because I was really scared to sleep alone, so I slept with my parents, but I'm a really bad sleeper. And at midnight, I would start kicking everyone who was next to me. And that night, without meaning to, I kicked my mom in the belly. But I didn't know she was pregnant because it was a surprise. And when they told me the next day, I said, oh no, my little brother. And my mom tells me,
calm down, son, everything's fine, but tonight you'll sleep tied up.
The good thing is I slept tied up, but my little brother, who's silly, was born.
Oh crap, my mind.
One time my dog Mickey almost went to dog heaven. It was my fault because one day I wanted to take him for a walk but I didn't have a leash. So at that moment I came up with the brilliant idea one even Einstein wouldn't have thought of, to use a plastic zip tie. You know, the kind that gets tighter the more you pull. And I put it around his neck, but without meaning to, I pulled it too tight and almost choked my poor dog. But before he turned purple, my 11-year-old self had a light bulb moment and ran to get some scissors to cut the tie. And thank God my parents never found out. I hope they don't see this video. Once when I was 16, I was invited to a party because it was my friend La Platano's birthday. And because I was clumsy, I ended up embarrassing myself in front of the whole party. Twice in a row, since one time I got up to use the bathroom. And as I'm walking, I slipped so badly that I couldn't even catch myself and I hit my chin really hard and La Platano's aunt says to me,
are you okay, son? That was a hell of a hit you took.
But I acted tough like it didn't even hurt. So when I was coming back from the bathroom and was about to sit in my chair, there was a step in the floor behind me and I fell backwards on my butt. And I landed flat on the grass and everyone laughed at me. One time my dad almost went blind when he was fixing the water pipes. But he used a crazy technique to save himself because he was using a chemical to fix the pipes. But then, since the product wouldn't come out, he grabbed it and pointed it at his face and said, come out already, damn thing. And then the liquid shot out and hit his face and eyes. But the product was so strong that he had to wash it off with water and quickly go to the hospital. And since there was no water, he grabbed water from the toilet bowl and started washing his eyes, then ran to the hospital. The good thing is he didn't go blind, but his eyes were redder than a junkie's.
Hello!
Once when I was a kid, I thought that when people talk to God in prayer, they just did this like psst, psst. It didn't make sense because that's how I heard my grandma and my aunts do it. But one day I went to mass with my grandma and I heard her going psst, 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 psst. So I started copying her and doing the same thing, and when my grandma heard me, she said, "What are you doing, son?" And I said to my grandma, "Praying, grandma." And she said, "And why are you just doing piss, piss, piss?" But I didn't understand. And then she explained to me that she was actually saying words, just whispered. And for 8 years of my life, I only talked to God like this. Psst, 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 psst.
牙舞爪健身操，祝您健康，不不。
One time I almost had to rob a bank because I dropped an iPhone 15 Pro Max in a drain and it wasn't mine. It belonged to my cousin Guanabana, but I came up with a 200 IQ idea that saved my life because I was with my cousin Guanabana who was showing off his new iPhone. I said, "Let me see it, let me borrow it." He gave it to me and I asked, "Does this fly?" And like an idiot, I threw it. But I hadn't seen that there was an open manhole and the phone fell right in there. And then Guanabana says to me, "Are you stupid? How is it going to fly? It's a cell phone, dummy." And I was freaking out, so I went to the drain where everything people throw away ends up at the end of the pipe. I was there for like 4 hours with a net trying to get the phone back, and in the end, thank God I got it. Once when I was a kid, I got traumatized by the security gates at the supermarket because I was afraid they'd go off and people would think I was a thief. But even though I knew I hadn't stolen anything and that we had bought everything, I was still scared to walk through them. Because those things go off for no reason sometimes. So I was scared they'd go off and people and employees would think I was stealing something. And to this day, honestly, I still get nervous that for no reason they'll go off and embarrass me in front of everyone.
I'm scared, I'm scared, I'm scared, scared, I'm scared.
One time my dad ruined a new car I had just bought because I said, "Hey dad, do you have time to tune up my car?" And my dad replied, "Tuna?" And I was like, "Huh? I mean customize it." And he says to me, "Oh yes son, I'll take it tomorrow." So the next day comes, in the afternoon I see my car and I realize that on the hood it had my full name, age, date of birth, zodiac sign, and I just froze. And I say to him, "Dad, what the heck did you do?" And he says, "Wasn't that what you wanted? Honestly, it was a bad idea to have asked him for that favor." One time when I was a kid, I thought the girl from The Ring was appearing to me on my grandma's TV at 10 at night because I was watching Curious George. But then the whole TV started glitching like when the girl from The Ring was about to come out. And just a month before I had watched that movie with my grandma, so I ran out of the living room because I thought I was going to get scared. But actually it was just that the DVD disc was scratched and got stuck, and that's why it started to glitch. But thank God it wasn't the girl from The Ring. One time when I was using the school bathrooms, a boy peeked his head under the stall while I was pooping. Because that guy was a little crazy in the head, and sometimes he would even go into the girls' bathroom to spy. And that day I really had to take a dump, and the crazy guy peeked under the door. And at that exact moment I was about to finish pooping. I couldn't finish peacefully anymore, so I kicked him for being an idiot. One time when Chanita was using the school bathrooms, a boy was recording her with his phone over the stall while she was peeing. Because that guy was super perverted and he wasn't in his right mind, he had even less. So sometimes he would go into the girls' bathroom to spy, and that day Chanita asked for permission to go to the bathroom. And crazy Maclovio went after her, but right at that moment, already in the bathroom, Chanita farted. So the fool Maclovio laughed and Chanita saw him and punched him in the nose.
People only understand after getting punched.
One time a lady farted in my face when I was 7 years old and I was in a Zumba class with my mom. And that filthy woman, she just laughed and told me,
"Oh, I think my butt cheeks feel slippery."
Because we were in class like this, and 1 and 2 and 3. And well, I was behind her and she was a fat lady who took up almost all the space. So after she let it out and sprayed me, she turns around and goes,
"I think my butt cheeks feel slippery."
And I was like, "Mom, this is a biological weapon. My eyes are burning. Help me."
Call the police! They're killing me!
One time a girl had me dying laughing because of something she said. She was doing a really cringe TikTok dance. So I told her, "Stop doing that, you're being cringe." Then she just stared at me and said, "What?" And I said, "You know what cringe is, right?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" And she told me it's the one who hates Christmas. She thought that cringe and Grinch were the same thing. So I laughed so hard, but she didn't understand anything until I explained it to her, and then she got it. One time my dad humiliated me and I started crying because of something he did to me because one day I told him,
Daddy, look at this video from school that I made. It only lasts 5 minutes.
So I took it and put the video on the TV for him. So I sat next to him because my dad was lying on the bed. And when the video was about 3 minutes in, I turned to him and said,
What do you think about it?
And I turned to look and he was already completely asleep. So I got upset and went crying to my room because I was 10 years old. One time my buddy Carries played a prank on his sister telling her he had thrown away all her Barbies. She had more than 100. And in the end, Carries got scolded and grounded for 138 days, which was the number of Barbies his sister had because the dude was bored, alone at home. So he decided to hide his sister's dolls, and when she came back he yelled,
Teresita, I threw away all your Barbies.
And Teresita ran like Lightning McQueen to check on her dolls. And when she saw they weren't there, she started to cry and Carries was dying of laughter. But then Teresita started dying of laughter too because her mom was behind Carries looking at him with a possessed devil look in her eyes like this. Once when I was 5 years old and in kindergarten, I decided to try the classroom glue because I thought it tasted like vanilla, and without anyone seeing me, I gave it a lick, then another, and it seemed like a heavenly treat to me. Until the teacher caught me and yelled, Kids, stop eating the glue, but it was already too late. I felt like little chef from Ratatouille was cooking for me and I said no. She took me to the bathroom to clean up while lecturing me on why you shouldn't eat glue. I didn't care, and once back in class, I continued my culinary experiment. One time I got a 1.3 on a test because I didn't understand a thing in class. But so I wouldn't look dumb, I nodded my head as if I were the smartest one. And the teacher was explaining and I was there, confidently nodding my head up and down, even pretending to take notes. But when the day of the exam came, I got a glorious 1.3 and the teacher looked at me and said, What the hell, Manuel? You were like a bobblehead in class, nodding and even taking notes. What happened to you? And me with my dignity on the floor, I just said, Teacher, I was just drawing little figures. I didn't understand a thing. Subscribe if you're breathing right now. You didn't have to cut me off. One time during the deadly exam season, I thought I was going to have a heart attack because my buddy El Queso, who was the teacher's son, swore that his mom had given him the exam with the answers and that we would pass easily. So I stayed up all night studying like I was about to join NASA, but the genius had grabbed the exam from the wrong group. So on the day of the exam, I walked in confident, looked at the test, and I couldn't even understand my own name. Then I started sweating like I was running a marathon in the desert. And in the end, I ended up getting 6 out of 50. And the guy, all chill, says to me,
Oops, it was from another group.
Honestly, I almost suffocated him with my backpack.
Are you crazy? You bloody...
One time my dad was filled with the Holy Spirit because he started speaking in tongues after signing up for a karaoke contest. He said he had the voice of Luis Miguel. So he was all excited, but when the track started, it was in Japanese. So instead of stopping, my dad started making up really weird words and he sang like this. And the best part is that he sang it with so much passion that people stood up to applaud him, and a man even shouted, Now that's international art, and in the end he didn't win. But now in the neighborhood they call him Luis Miguel San.
Luis Miguel San.
One time, my little cousin Tizok swore that his Chafon 13 Pro Masa was stolen because he left it on the table at the taco place, and when he came back, it was gone. But suddenly, my whole family went into SWAT mode. Even the taco guy joined the operation. So after half an hour of checking cameras, looking under the tables, and accusing innocent people, the big dummy had it in his pocket the whole time. Since that day, we call him Dora the Explorer because he never finds anything even when it's right in front of him. When I was 11, I thought I'd become a millionaire in 2 days after watching a video that said, invest in Bitcoin and you'll become a millionaire. So I grabbed my piggy bank with 69 pesos and all excited, I go to a website to buy cryptocurrencies. I see a huge button that said invest all, and without thinking, I click it. But 3 days later, I was already bragging that I was an investor on Elon Musk's level. But my cousin checks my account and tells me, bro, you're in demo mode. And that day I learned I was going to stay just as broke. One time, my dad gave me a laptop because it was my birthday. But then my mom told me,
"Hey Manuelito, can I borrow your laptop?"
And I was really scared to lend it to her because I thought to myself, I hope she doesn't see that I spend all my time playing games, because if she does, she's going to throw it at my head. And then she calls me and says,
"Hey, what is this?"
And I saw that she had my grades open and it said Manuel Antonio's overall average 9.3. And she says to me,
"That's my boy. That's it. That's why I'm going to buy you a little game."
And who? The good thing is that God is on my side, because otherwise she would have beaten me with the laptop.
Damn, that was close.
Once when I was in middle school, I had a friend we called the baby. Because the guy would wet himself every night and soak the bed while he slept, and every time he got to school. We would cover our noses when he walked by us because he didn't exactly smell good, but he would say,
"Why are you covering your noses? It's my essence."
Until one day, a humble classmate bought him some adult diapers and gave them to him so he wouldn't come to school all dirty anymore.
Oh my god, I'm pooping myself. The poop is coming out. Oh!
One time I was on a video call with my girlfriend at 3 in the morning and we saw a demon's face behind her and we screamed like we were being exorcised. But I was like 800 kilometers away and I still cried and couldn't even move from fear. So we stayed frozen until about 7 in the morning, not even going to the bathroom, afraid something would grab our feet. And yes, we teed the bed. But in the end, with the sunlight, we saw it was just a simple ribbon on her head which looked deformed in the dark, and it almost sent us to meet Jesus Christ.
I was paralyzed, really scared, and I couldn't move. In front of me was a creature that was just too horrible.
One time, my brother almost made me explode with anger over something silly he did because he wanted to be my video editor, and I told him, okay, but please don't ruin my channel. But after half an hour, he had already zoomed in on my armpits instead of my face and exported everything upside down. So, with my left eye about to pop out, I looked at him like, seriously? But he, all excited, said to me, "It's looking cool, right?" And I said to him, "Thanks for participating. But just when I was about to fire him, my girlfriend showed up and out of pity taught him all the editing techniques. And now he edits better than I do. One time my dog Mickey almost ended up in heaven because of me, because I swore I could make him as smart as a human since it all started. When my mom told me that if I ate walnuts I would get smarter, so I bought a sack and thought, well, if it works for me, it should work for Mickey too. So I gave him walnuts every day hoping he would say good morning. But after a week my cousin Macario saw me and shouted, "That kills dogs." And I was frozen, imagining Mickey greeting me from the afterlife. Since then my family calls me the nutty professor of the neighborhood. Once when I was a kid, I thought there was a panther spider in the movie theater because I saw a huge shadow walking on the wall just as they turned off the lights, and I screamed,
"Ladies, run! They're going to bite us!"
Then it turned into a Marvel apocalypse level chaos. Ladies running with popcorn like popcorn raining down, a man threw his jumbo soda like a diabetes waterfall, and a baby started crying as if he had a speaker in his mouth, and Tizok, being a coward, hid behind the seat like a low-ranking soldier. Ultimately, the manager turned on the lights and revealed it was just a black balloon stuck to the air conditioner. Luckily, I was only 8, otherwise they might have banned me from the theater forever.
Wait.
Once when I was playing Clash of Clans, I had the best clan in the world and I felt like a digital emperor. But one day I made the dumbest mistake ever. I made a random guy named Pero777 a co-leader. And I went on vacation. So I come back all happy, open the game, and my clan was empty. I was the only one left, like a king without a kingdom. And there was a message floating in the chat that said, "Get trolled, idiot." I felt like Supercell hit me right in the soul, but the worst part is that a few months later my account got hacked.
I must push the toxic. I'll beat up so rude. It's
One time my nephew Mbapene almost pulled his hair out because that guy was so broke he told me, "Uncle, I don't even have money for chips. Can you give me some work?" So I taught him how to edit videos, but the guy didn't even understand how to cut a clip, so he got frustrated and pulled his hair out in desperation. And every time he got an error, he would yell, "I hate Premiere!" And I tried to calm him down, but in the end he ended up crying, hugging the monitor. And in the end he did learn, and today he earns more than I do. That useless guy ended up going viral.
Because I can't do anything right.
One time when my brother Moharin was cleaning Tizok's fish tank, he decided to hook up an oxygen pump made by my buddy Tribilene. But instead of bubbles, it started shooting out sparks and smoke like a nuclear reactor. Then the fish tank exploded, so my cousin Chanok tried to save Nemo and dumped the whole tank on top of my uncle Don Pulgon's TV, and in the end now Nemo lives in the toilet. And Moharin is forbidden from touching any cables until 2057. One time when my buddy El Queso wanted to contribute something big for my uncle Don Pulgon's party, he bought 24 3-liter Cokes and decided to put them all in the freezer so they'd get really cold, fast. But the fool forgot about them. So 3 hours later, the bottles started exploding one by one like military grenades inside the freezer. Then the kitchen already looked like a war zone. Tizok was screaming,
"We're going to die!"
And Robalina was recording everything in slow motion while my grandma Chona was praying, dodging the flying Coca-Cola. And since that day, the kitchen has been called Chernobyl Cola. Hello! I almost got disinherited because of a rude man who lived in the mountains, because when I was a kid, I thought the echo was some guy hiding, repeating everything just to annoy me. So, on a family trip to the mountains, I shouted my name and it came back to me and I got really freaked out and told my mom, "Mom,
there's a man making fun of me!"
But since nobody believed me, I got mad and challenged him to say the worst swear words I knew, and the echo repeated them really loudly in front of my family and other kids. And the bad thing is that it was heard all over the valley, and my dad gave me a smack for being rude, but I tried to defend myself by saying that the man had started it, but again, nobody believed me. And I spent 10 years thinking that there were people inside the mountains hired just to insult tourists. Once I was nearly kicked out of the bank for shouting that the ATM was giving away money. As a kid, I honestly thought I discovered the perfect hack for infinite money. I used to think the ATM was like a magic machine. You put your card in and it gave you money. So I go with my dad to the bank, I see him take out bills, and I, super excited, shout at the top of my lungs, "Dad, put the card in again so you can get another prize." And then there was this awkward, horrible silence. Even the security guard gave me a really nasty look. So my dad covered my mouth and I still asked him, "Why don't you want more money?" In the end, he explained to me that it was his money and that the security guard burst out laughing at my nonsense. One time when I was in middle school, I found out that my buddy Culebra was even more of a thief than the Green Goblin. Because we were in the classroom when a really worried girl came in shouting,
"Have you guys seen my iPhone?"
And right at that moment, Culebra shows it to me under the table, cracking up, and I thought they're going to take this guy to jail for being so bold. But the guy, cool as can be, goes up to the girl and says, "No, we haven't seen it, but if you want, I can help you look for it." I just thought this bastard was born without shame. In the end, the poor girl never found her iPhone, and my friend got himself a new phone until his mom took it away from him and gave it back to the girl. One time my cousin Macario knocked out the power for the whole block because he tried to plug in his Xbox, the blender, a drill, the microwave, and the fan all into the same outlet with a cheap cable. But then there was a loud bang. Even the sky turned red like it was the end of the world. Then my grandma Kata started yelling, "The apocalypse has begun, my children." And Moharin got down on his knees to pray, but Macario showed up with a candle and said, "Relax, I'll fix it." He touched the wire and got electrocuted, flying off like Goku. And since that day, whenever the power goes out, we all say Macario must be playing around again.
I'm crazy. I'm crazy.
Once at the school's Christmas party, when they set up a Santa-themed inflatable, Mojarin shouted, "Let's do the reindeer jump." And before I could tell him no, he was already climbing up onto a corner of the inflatable. But Tizak and Panza started jumping so hard that Mojarin was launched like a Christmas projectile straight into a star-shaped piñata. Then the piñata exploded, the candy rained down like a Christmas blessing, and a kid shouted,
"Christmas miracle!"
And from that day on, the principal banned all kinds of inflatables, and that day the event was called the Flight of Mojarin. Once my little cousin Tisok set the kitchen on fire while pretending to be a professional chef because he said he was going to make some gourmet French fries. And I told him, okay, but don't mess it up. But as soon as he put in the oil, it started to smoke like he was summoning a dragon. So the fool decided to pour water on the boiling oil to cool it down. Then the pan exploded like fireworks at a fair, and Tisok started blowing on the fire as if that would put it out. So I ran to get Grandma Kata, who showed up with a sandal in one hand and the fire extinguisher in the other. And since that day, Tisok has been forbidden from frying even an egg. One time, my mom thought I was hanging out with some OXXO thieves because of my friend El Kalaka since we were at his house, but then my mom called me. So I answer her, but I tell Kalaka, don't say anything stupid, okay? But it seems like I told him the opposite because he goes, and as soon as I say, hi mom, that guy starts, well today we have 8 OXXOs to rob, guys. And I'm like, shut up, but my mom says,
what's that, Manuelito?
I say, nothing, just a crazy friend. My mom replies,
you better not end up in jail, kid.
And since she didn't trust me, she called me on video to see what I was doing because she thought I was hanging out with the next Gru from Despicable Me. Once I had a buddy who had been away from church for months, and one Sunday he woke up with an emptiness he couldn't ignore anymore. It wasn't sadness, it was hunger for something more. But he was embarrassed to come back because he thought, how can I show my face again? They're going to make fun of me. So he sat all the way in the back without saying a word. And when he heard, this is my body given up for you, he felt like someone was calling him by his name. They didn't scold or single him out, they simply embraced him from the altar. Because sometimes going back to Mass isn't about understanding, it's because your soul is asking you to,
I love you, God, I trust in you.
One time, my mom almost killed me with sadness because my grandma Kata had given me 1,500 pesos for my birthday, and I, really excited, went straight to the market to buy a talking parrot, and I swore it was going to be the star of the house because I even taught it phrases and jokes. But one day when I went to show off my progress to my mom, she said to me,
sweetie, I gave your parrot to Aunt Petronilla because it was already insulting everyone.
And I, pale and trembling, said to her, Mom, I spent 1,550 hours teaching it to talk just for you to give it away. And she all calm says to me,
well, thank God now we have peace and quiet.
So, in the end, since she felt guilty, she bought me a lousy goldfish, which died after 2 days. Once, my Aunt Petronilla, who is rich, organized a surprise birthday party for my cousin Guanabana. A tragedy happened because of my dumb little cousin Tizok. Because we planned to hide the cake in the bathroom so no one would see it, but when we took it out to sing happy birthday, Tizok tripped over the speaker cable and the cake went flying, with all the candles lit in slow motion right into my aunt's face. Then we all froze like museum statues, and my grandma, very stoic, shouted,
blow out the candle anyway, sweetie.
But the worst part is that when we thought the tragedy was over, the dog jumped on the table and ate what was left. One time my mom swore that the blender was possessed because in the middle of the night it would turn on by itself and sounded like someone was screaming inside. Until one day my dad blessed it with water. My grandma made the sign of the cross on it like 9,000 times, and my Aunt Calabaza even played praise music for it. But after 3 nights of terror, we discovered it wasn't any demon, but that my Uncle Chucho would get up sleepwalking at 3 in the morning to make orange juice because, according to him, that's when vitamin C is best preserved.
I love you, God, I trust in you.
Once, when my little cousin Tizak was 4, he yelled there was a crocodile in the toilet and warned us not to use the bathroom because it would bite our butts. And at that moment, we all went into Steve Irwin mode because my dad grabbed a rusty machete, my mom a frying pan, and I grabbed a baseball bat. But after 20 minutes, my brother Moharin goes in with a flashlight, checks the bathroom, and it turns out the crocodile was a green sock stuck in the toilet that my cousin Chanok had thrown in. But the worst part is that since that day, Taisok has been traumatized because every time he goes into the bathroom, he goes in armed like he's going to Jurassic Park. One time when they set up a Christmas bounce house with lights and fake snow at the neighborhood party, Panza shouted, "I'm going in like a saint on a sleigh," and climbed up a ladder to jump onto the bounce house. But we all knew that was never going to end well. Mojaren was already underneath praying. Tizok got a mattress ready filled with jackets. And Don Margarito, instead of telling him not to do it, was filming like a professional cameraman. Then, Panza jumped like a wild reindeer, landed on his belly, and the snow flew up like a Christmas nuclear explosion. And that day, the bounce house was named the Big Belly Avalanche. One time when they put a giant inflatable reindeer outside the park in the neighborhood to feel the Christmas spirit, Panza said, "If I climb it and ride it, I'm Santa Premier." But as soon as he put a foot on the reindeer, Tizok shouted, "Climbing maneuver, soldiers!" and all the kids jumped onto the inflatable. Like it was a medieval war. Moharin tied a scarf around himself as if it were a real climbing rope, and even my uncle Kagwamon tried to direct the operation from below. Then the poor reindeer started to deflate in slow motion. The red nose sank like the Titanic. Everyone was screaming. A kid rolled out like a Christmas ornament and ended up flattened on the ground like a sad tortilla. Since then, the neighborhood stopped putting up decorations.
Think about you, just remember.
Once my little cousin Chicharin had his PlayStation pawned, and he never got it back because his dad had asked him to take the clothes out of the dryer. And Chicharin, without taking his eyes off the screen, he says,
"Yeah, in a minute!"
But he forgot. And 3 hours later, his dad comes back and notices the house smells like a tortilla shop. Then he looks at the dryer and shouts, "Chicharin, son of your lovely mother, get over here!" And in the end, he unplugged his PlayStation, completely formatted it, and pawned it to buy new clothes. And poor Chicharin got depressed and didn't leave his room for 2 weeks. Once, when I was 11 years old, I made my whole school believe that I had a real pepper spray because my cousin Sardina had given me a fake one that they sold at a joke shop, but it looked exactly like a real one. It had a cap, a button, and even made the psas sound, but it was actually just air. So everyone saw me as the dangerous one in the class. But one day, just messing around, being dumb, I pressed the button in front of the principal, and the sound was so loud that they activated the emergency protocol and wrote me up. Once when I was a kid, I thought Coke was butt water and that's why it was black. One day my dad went to the store to buy a soda, and when he returned I told him,
"What's that? And why is it black?"
And he tells me, "It's a cola flavored soda, son." And since I was a kid, I just stood there. But then he says, "Do you want a little?" I told him no, since I wasn't about to drink someone else's tail water. I don't think he understood. Then he grabbed a glass, poured some cola, and said, "So tasty." And I almost threw up in front of him until one day they explained to me that it wasn't butt water. I tried it and I became addicted to soda. One time my nephew Mbappé thought he was going to go to heaven with Michael Jackson because he was choking on some flies he had accidentally inhaled because we were playing soccer. But that guy, when he plays, he breathes like this, like he wants to steal all the oxygen from planet Earth. But then he coughed non-stop for a whole minute. We asked, "Are you okay? What happened?" And he says, "No, I'm not okay, I'm going to die." Because the fool had swallowed 2 flies that were passing by. And since the guy is super dramatic, he thought they had gone into his lung and that they were going to lay eggs in him.
"Call the police! They're killing me!"
One time when I was in school, I slammed really hard into a pole because I was waving like an idiot at my mom since she had come to pick me up. But the worst part wasn't the hit, it was that the girl I liked was standing right in front of me. And instead of helping me, she burst out laughing so loudly that even the birds got scared. And there I was, sprawled out on the ground with the pole half bent, and I said, "Everyone relax. I train with Goku." And since that day, they nicknamed me Ironhead. But the worst part is the pole is still crooked.
Caminando como un flow violento.
One time my cousin Pancho swore that the Holy Spirit was his enemy because according to him, every time he did something wrong, bad things happened to him. Like his Choco Crispus would get burned, his internet would go out, or a bee would sting his butt, and that wasn't all. He said that in his dreams, a dove would spy on him from the corner, and I laughed because that guy is crazy, seriously. And that day he wrote a defiant letter and left it on the altar. But the next morning he woke up surrounded by doves at the window. But it was because he left sweetbread open on the bed. Once when I was 11 years old, I almost fainted from embarrassment at school because I was in the middle of chemistry class when I felt a cramp in my stomach. One of those that warn you something bad is about to happen. So I tried like a champ to hold in the fart, but suddenly it slipped out, and not just any fart but a really stinky one that even echoed in the classroom, and the whole class went silent and the teacher said,
"Who was it?"
And me, all panicked, I pointed at the chubby kid in the back, but the guy stood his ground and shouted, "Come on, it was Manuel." Then everyone burst out laughing and I just replied, "We're in chemistry class. I was just giving an example of methane gas. These guys are so ignorant." One time when I was at my grandma Cora's house, my cousin Tizok yelled that I was turning into a nahual because he found a tick stuck to my leg. And everyone went into horror movie mode. Then Macario lit some candles and Panza started reciting the Chavo del Ocho prayer as if it were an exorcism. And even my grandma Chona tied me up with a sheet yelling,
"So the hairy demon doesn't come out."
And I was already crying because at any moment they could lock me up in a Pentagon laboratory. But in the end, when the supposed evil tick fell to the floor, it turned out to be just a dried bean. And that day my family almost died laughing, but I didn't find it funny at all. I'm at the One time I thought my friend El Panzas had kicked the bucket at a party because he fell asleep with his eyes half open and wouldn't react even when I smacked him. But then we tried everything, but the guy was still stiff like a mummy, so we said something's weird. And my buddy Kalaka unlocked El Panzas' phone and played him a voice note from his ex that said,
"Panzas, we need to talk."
And at that moment, the fool jumped up like a spring and said, "No way, what did I do now?" He even started sweating. The good thing is he hadn't kicked the bucket, but he woke up faster than when there's a 2-for-1 at McDonald's. While playing Fortnite, my friend Chino's little brother said he wants to touch the little fox. I said, "Holy mother of God, what did this kid just say?" But it was because he had an interactive backpack and he could pet whatever pet he had on his back, and I hadn't understood what he was referring to. And I tell my friend, "Hey man, your little brother is disturbed." Then he goes to his parents and tells on his brother. But then the poor kid explained what he meant and that he wasn't saying anything bad because he was only 5 years old.
Repent, son of the devil!
One time, a kid disappeared right in front of me like magic because I was at my friend Rodolfo's party, and at the party I found a kid in a little room and he goes and says to me,
"Look, kid, I'm gonna show you a magic trick."
And he goes and says to me,
"On the count of 3, I'm going to disappear right in front of your eyes. 1, 2, 3.
And then he goes and turns off the light in the room. But since the kid was really dark-skinned, he actually disappeared and I couldn't see him. In the end, I applauded him because he was an amazing up-and-coming magician.
If you didn't fight
One time, a kid humiliated an old lady in a wheelchair who was paraplegic because of something crazy he said. We were at the church celebration for September 15th and a kid gets up on stage and says, "I want everyone, absolutely everyone, please stand up to shout Viva Mexico!" But well, we all stood up except for the lady for obvious reasons. And then the damn kid yells at the lady over the microphone,
"Stand up, party pooper lady, don't be lazy."
And honestly, I just stood there like this. One time my girlfriend gave me a gel blaster because we were celebrating 5 years together, but once she said, "Oh look, a choo-choo." And I said, "What?" And then she told me there was a salamander in my room and that damn salamander was always pooping on my bed and sometimes even on my pillow. So I said, "Bring me the gun. I'm gonna shoot it." And I saw that the salamander was looking at me like it was making fun of me. So I started shooting at it and it fell to the floor, but then we couldn't see it anymore. And I started teasing my girlfriend saying, "Oh, it's on your foot." At one point, she ran out and slammed the door in her face because of me. I eventually got rid of the salamander, but unfortunately, I also got shot. One time my girlfriend and I won a TV in a raffle and we started praying 100 Our Fathers to thank God. But my brother heard us praying and thought a demon had gotten into my house because, you know, when we got to the 100th Our Father and finished, he came in and said, "What the hell happened?" And then we told him that we had won a 50,000 peso TV and he said, "Holy crap, I was about to leave. I thought the devil was in the house."
My God, Lord, save me. I call upon God, O angel and warrior.
When I was 7, I woke up having wet myself on the new mattress my parents bought since I often wet the bed as a child. But that day, I was dreaming that I really needed to pee, but in the dream there was no bathroom where I was. But then when I got up around 3 in the morning, I saw and realized that it wasn't just a dream, but that in real life I had peed myself too. And my parents punished me for peeing myself and made me sleep on the floor for a week for being dirty. Once I pranked my buddy Camaroncito by telling him I deleted his Fortnite, which he had put about 55,000 pesos into. And in the end, he started crying because the guy had left his laptop in the classroom and had gone to the bathroom. So when he came back, I told him, say goodbye to your Fortnite skins. And from the classroom door, he said, no man, please. And I said, hasta la vista, baby. And I pretended like I had pressed the button and deleted everything. So he ran to check his laptop crying, but the truth is I had only deleted the Fortnite icon. But he believed it and tried to beat me up, but in the end, to calm him down, I had to tell him it was a joke. Once I had a brother who was kind of dumb because he spent all day playing Minecraft, so one day he broke the Xbox because I played with him and by accident I destroyed half of his house in his world. So he went to tell my mom crying, Manuelito burned down my house, mom. But my mom said, calm down, Danny, it's just a game. That crazy and silly guy grabbed a baseball bat and started hitting the console with it because nothing had been done to me. And in the end, she ended up punishing him. And my mom made him sweep and mop the house for 3 months so they could buy another Xbox. This story was told by my subscriber, Lionel Alvarez.
Subscribe if you want me to share your story.
Once I had a little bird named Panchito until Bigotes, the neighbor's cat, ruined my life. Panchito was my best friend. He sang better than Michael Jackson, but Bigotes had other plans. Panchito decided that the bars weren't for him and made a run for it like a maniac and ended up on Bigotes' menu. But when I arrived, all that was left was a feather, and Bigotes pretended nothing had happened. What an actor, huh? And I said, confess, Bigotes, but of course he just licked his paws. That cat had nerves of steel, so I made a vow I would never trust a demon disguised as a cat again. And Bigotes still hangs around my house, but he doesn't dare come in because he knows I have a battle-ready chihuahua now. One time, my family and I got stranded in the middle of the highway, in the middle of nowhere, because my dad said, we'll make it with the gas we have left. But the truck said, no. And it shut off as if it had just given up. So my mom started praying and I was looking for a signal on my phone like it was a UFO detector. But out of nowhere, by the grace of God, a man shows up on a horse just casually like he's a ranch NPC, and he says to us, do you kids need a ride? And we were like, yes. Then my dad says to him, but can the little horse make it all the way to the gas station? And the man replies, don't worry, buddy, this little guy's got extra fuel. He eats better than I do. Get on, buddy. And he took my dad, and they came back triumphant with gas. Once when I was 12 years old, I was a little crazy in the head because I used to kiss myself in the mirror because I would look at myself and smile and say, hey handsome, should we give ourselves a kiss or what? And I would give myself a big soap opera kiss with my own reflection. But one day, right at the climax of the romantic scene with my reflection, my dad walked in without warning. He stared at me like he had just witnessed a satanic ritual, and I, all nervous, said to him, Dad, this is emotional growth. He left slowly and we never talked about it again, but the mirror still loves me. One time, my grandma got mad at me and thought I was the worst grandson because I wouldn't share Interjet with her, but it's just that one time she said to me, sweetie, don't be mean, share your Interjet with me because I don't have any here and I get bored. And I told her, Grandma, I can't because we're far apart in different houses. And yeah, I live 30 minutes away and she thought that didn't matter. But it's not like I had Elon Musk's Ultra Turbo NASA Master 4K internet. So she thought I was being mean to her. And every time I went to her house, she would give me a dirty look like stupid jerk. One time when I was 7 years old, I made my brother, the chimpanzee, cry in front of all his college classmates, and I embarrassed him because he and his classmates had done a project to make a game, and everyone brought their little brother or cousin to school to test it. So all the kids started playing the games, and at the end we had to vote for the one we liked the most. But I didn't vote for my brother's game. I voted for another guy's game, which was cooler. Then he asked me, "You voted for mine, right?" And I said no. Then he started crying and throwing a tantrum in front of his friends because he felt betrayed.
The disappointment, the betrayal, my friend.
Once my brother thought that my dad didn't love him and actually hated him, and he was down for like 3 years. Because one day it was Christmas and my brother went to hug my dad to wish him a Merry Christmas, and he said,
"Daddy, I love you so much. You're the best dad in the world."
And my dad puts his hand on his shoulder and says very seriously, "Okay, I love you too, son." So that guy thought my dad hated him and didn't love him, and he went to the bathroom to cry so no one would see him, and I went after him and said, "Why are you crying?" And he goes,
"My dad doesn't love me, dude."
Forgive me, little girl.
One time at Christmas, I was given the job of serving the Coke to everyone at dinner, and it was a big mistake because I'm really clumsy. And there I was with the 3-liter bottle that looked calm but was actually a bomb about to explode, because when I opened it, it went boom. And Coke started coming out everywhere, and my grandma was screaming in fright because I think she got flashbacks from Afghanistan because of the sound, and everyone ended up soaked in Coke. But the good thing is that I learned a very important lesson. The true Christmas spirit isn't in the meal or the gifts, it's in the mess.
Coca-Cola foam.
In kindergarten, my teacher punished me for talking too much by making me stand in the classroom corner facing the wall. But the teacher didn't realize that I talk non-stop, and I made up imaginary friends so I could keep talking, and the teacher would say to me,
"Who are you talking to, child? There's no one near you anymore."
And I would say to her,
"With Miguelito. Don't you see him? He's right there. He said he's visiting you tonight."
And the teacher just sent me back to my seat because she got scared. And the next day she told me,
"Because of you, I didn't sleep all night, kid."
One time when I was sleeping with my girlfriend, I thought she was caressing me. But when I got up, I realized it was a damn cockroach on my face because the night before a cockroach had gotten into the room. So I went to get the insecticide, but while I was going, the damn cockroach ran away and I didn't know where it went. But I told my girlfriend, it must have gone out already. Let's go to sleep. But at midnight, I start to feel something touching my forehead. I get up and say, "Oh, my beautiful girlfriend." But then I see that she had her hands on her stomach. And in the end, I realized that what was touching me was the cockroach. And I ran out of bed so fast that I even woke up and scared my girlfriend. Once at a party, I had to shake hands with a fat man who I clearly saw had just scratched his butt. My mom introduced me to him because he owned an important company or something. But then this man reaches out and says, "Nice to meet you, son. My name is Ricardo." I think to myself, after this, my hand won't be too pleased. Still, I shake his hand. What else could I do? Before I washed my hands, my crazy brain thought, I wonder what it smells like. Rich or poor, they all smell the same. One time, a subscriber named Ricardo saw his dad get the beating of his life, all because of a massive rock and a new truck, since they'd just gotten a new truck. Then out of nowhere, a construction worker accidentally hit the truck door with a rock, and his dad got out feeling like John Wick ready to fight, but it turned out the construction worker was super ripped. One of those guys who carries sacks like they're feathers, and his dad ended up on the ground with his dignity bruised. But the crazy part is that the police showed up and forced the worker to pay so much in compensation that his dad ended up putting a turbo and luxury rims on the truck. In the end, bruises go away, but the turbo is forever. One time when I was at the family Christmas party, my little cousin Sardina started playing Mario Kart, saying he was the king of Christmas because he never lost. But he didn't know that we always had him playing against bots on easy mode, so he would feel special. So with the room full of cousins, he shouts, "Look at me, no one can catch me." But my uncle Macario accidentally pressed the button that changes the bots to expert level, and in 10 minutes 11 guys passed him, and Sardina threw the controller and started crying and said, "The Christmas carols betrayed me." And since that day, the poor kid discovered that Christmas also brings painful truths. Once when my grandma Chona discovered Wi-Fi, she thought it was witchcraft because she saw the modem light blinking and shouted,
"That box is talking to the devil!"
And we all ran as if there was a live possession. My brother Moharin grabbed the bug spray as if it worked against demons. My uncle El Caguamon put on a bike helmet and I was shaking with the broom. But my grandma showed up with her rosary in legendary weapon mode and started praying to the antenna. Then my cousin Tizuk said, "Grandma, that's for the internet." And she replied,
"Internet? Well, no spirit gets in here without an invitation."
And since that day, you have to make the sign of the cross to turn on the Wi-Fi.
Girl, it really is hard.
One time, I felt like the smartest man in the world for finishing my advanced math exam in 10 minutes because it was Monday at 8 in the morning and the exam was supposed to last about 2 hours. But I had finished it in just 10 minutes and I thought I had done everything right. But then, 2 days later, when they handed out the results, the teacher goes and says, "I'm going to give the results in roster order." And since I was always the first one, he goes and says, "Manuel Aguilar, you got 1.8. And I just made this face. One time my grandpa was clearing brush at the ranch and he cut his leg with a machete, and when he went to the hospital they made fun of him because he arrives at the emergency room, so they receive him and treat him, everything's fine there, but then a nurse who was in the room says something. I don't get people who grab machetes and don't know how to use them, and my grandpa insulted him with words I can't even say here or they'll take down my video. But in the end, the poor nurse almost started crying and apologized to my grandpa. One time when my nephew Mbapene was born, I told my brother that I didn't care and to stop bothering me. Because it was like 3 in the morning and my brother El Macaco comes in and says, dude, Mbapene was just born. And I woke up all groggy, checked the time and saw it was 3:13 in the morning, so I told him, why the hell should I care? Let me sleep. And then in the morning I get up, I go see him and he was bald, and I said, is this why you wanted to wake me up, to see a bald baby? And because I was being mean, he gave me a smack on the head that made my head ring. One time my grandma almost died because of me, and she was going to haunt me at night because one day we were talking and then she says to me,
"Right now I'm taking magnesium, sweetie, so you'll have your grandma around for a long time."
And then I was like, no grandma, magnesium is carcinogenic. What you need to take is mercury. But since I'm dyslexic and a bit dumb, I was wrong because actually magnesium is good. But then my mom heard what I said and told me, Manuelito, mercury is a heavy, highly toxic material. And in my mind I was like, damn, I messed up. Now my grandma's going to think I want her land. One time my friend El Panzas almost killed himself in real life because they made him feel really bad at school because an annoying little girl said,
let's make a list of everyone in the school to see who we like and who we don't.
So after the voting was done, it turned out that most people voted that they didn't like El Panzas, and then the damn little girl went and showed it to El Panzas, and El Panzas just stood there like that.
I thought I was the most popular one.
So that guy was bummed out for like 2 weeks. Fifi. One time my little cousin Chicharin was about to be abducted by aliens because he came running in pale and screaming that there were Martians on the rooftop because he saw green lights and heard really weird noises like from another planet. And I said that apparently they were invading the neighborhood looking for collagen. So we all grabbed the first thing we found and went up to the rooftop in SWAT commando mode. And when we got there, we saw that it was my uncle Chompiras' new drone. The worst part is he recorded everything, including a video of me yelling, "No way, Martians!"
The Martians have arrived, and they came dancing a cool cha-cha.
Once my grandma Chona was almost traumatized for life because she thought there were giant mutant cockroaches in the kitchen since she found giant cockroach wings in the pantry, and she screamed as if she had seen Godzilla fused with King Kong. Then she grabbed her blessed sandal, ready for war, and made us surround the kitchen as if we were a Fortnite SWAT team. And I was there with the broom, trembling with fear, my brother Moharin with the bug spray, and my uncle with a bike helmet and a spatula. Then we opened the door slowly, and it turned out that the giant wings were actually burnt coffee beans in a torn bag. One time my mom saw a video of mine on YouTube and she noticed a comment that said, "Your account is washed up, you're insignificant," but my mom turned red with anger, clenched her fists and shouted,
"How dare you say insignificant? My son! He's more famous than Mr. Beast!"
Then she wrote 3 pages full of nothing but swear words, Bible style, and right before sending it she thought,
"What's the point? I better just block this brat."
She clicked and the hater disappeared forever, as if he had never existed.
If you didn't fight...
Once my nephew Mbapene nearly drove me crazy because he broke something every time we rode my bikes, but one day he really outdid himself. After just 3 minutes of riding, I heard a crack, and the front wheel flew off like a NASA rocket, and the rascal still says to me, "Look uncle, no wheel, record me." Like it was part of a circus trick, and I said, "What did you do now?" And he told me he had just rung the bell, but that little joke cost me my whole paycheck. One time my brother and I were traumatized for life because we were very nosy and we saw something we should have never seen. We were walking down the street and suddenly we heard screeching brakes and a bam! And we turned around and saw that it was a poor dog that had been run over. So being the nosy people we were, we pushed through the crowd to see the disaster. And there was the dog all messed up. As soon as we saw it, we ran away crying and screaming, "Mom!" And my brother swore he would never be nosy again, but he lied because he's a gossip and super nosy.
Run, fatty! Run, fatty!
One time I was traumatized for life because of my mom, because my aunt Petronila had given me 10,000 pesos supposedly for being a good boy. And I spent it on a really cool bike, one of those that almost look like they can fly. And one day I get home really happy, wanting to fly on my bike, and my mom says to me, "Son, they stole your bike." And all freaked out I say, What, how, when, where, why, for what, at what time?" But my dad, all nervous, confessed the truth to me. And it turns out my mom had tried to ride it and crashed hard into a curb, and the bike ended up bent like a spring. And since then I hide everything far away from my mom for safety. Once when I was born, I cried a lot during the first hour and my dad thought I had been born sick, and he used a masterful technique to make me stop crying, because when I was in my mom's belly, he would say to me, "Daddy, daddy, papi chulo, daddy, daddy, daddy chucho," almost always. So that day, November 1st, which is my birthday, since I wouldn't stop crying, he asked the doctor if everything was okay, and she said yes, that it was normal. But since he didn't want me to cry, he says to me, "Daddy, daddy, papi chulo, daddy, daddy, daddy chucho." And he told me that at that moment I stopped crying and opened my eyes wide.
Doing the things that I never would know. Treat me like what.
Once when I was a kid, an old fool embarrassed me in front of everyone at the supermarket because my parents and I were watching a demonstration of some glasses for cutting onions without crying. And then the man doing the demonstration said to me, "You, kid, come try these super glasses." So I went, they put them on me, and I started cutting onions. But those ugly glasses didn't work for me, and I still started crying. But the worst part is that because I was crying, the glasses fogged up, and now I couldn't see anything, and the dumb man started making fun of me in front of everyone else. One time when I was in middle school, we almost evacuated the whole school because my buddy Camaroncin opened his lunch and a smell came out that seemed like a biological weapon. But the funniest thing is that right next to him was Professor Cabeza de Olmeca eating his sandwich, and he almost fainted from the smell. But what happened was that Camaroncin had kept his lunch next to his used gym socks. But the worst part is that half the class was already throwing up, and the teacher, totally traumatized, ran out with his sandwich, and now my buddy is called Chernobyl Feet. One time when I was at home with my family, we all got a notification that said Global Alert. Because suddenly, all the cell phones started ringing at the same time with an alarm that sounded like the end of the world. And my grandma Chona yelled, "Hold on to something! The Archangel Gabriel has blown the trumpet!" Then my cousin Tizok ran for his cell phone so he wouldn't lose his Clash Royale account. My uncle got under the table and my dad started praying 10,000 Our Fathers. But after 5 minutes of chaos, my brother investigates and says it was just an emergency alert test. Once when I was a kid, I thought I was the flea market Achilles, and I almost lost an eye because I threw a broomstick like it was a Trojan spear. Then my cousin Macario shouted at me, "Go on, immortal warrior!" Meanwhile, I was running in slow motion like it was a Hollywood scene. But when I threw it, the stick hit a tree and bounced straight toward my eye, and I felt like my life was flashing before my eyes. But in the end, the stick didn't kill me because it just grazed me. What killed me was Macario's laughter, who fell to the ground crying with laughter as if he had seen Achilles 2.0 die.
That was close. If I hadn't protected myself, it would have killed me.
Once when we went to the beach at Christmas, my little cousin Tizok shouted at the top of his lungs, "A Goku-level tsunami is coming!" And we all ran as if the tsunami was going to swallow Mexico. There were ladies picking up umbrellas, kids climbing palm trees, my brother Moharin recording vertically to go viral, and my mom saying we should start a rosary so we could go to heaven. Then the big wave came and it was a total fake out because it barely got our ankles wet. It wasn't even enough to cool us off. But we were already scared like it was a world-class tsunami. And since that day, that tiny wave has been known as the Devil 3000 Kids Edition.
Hello? How are you? I'm underwater. Please help me. It's raining a lot.
Once when I traveled by plane for the first time, I almost forgot my BlackBerry phone inside the plane because I put it in the seat back pocket. But when we arrived in Acapulco, I got off really excited and left my phone there. But then I wanted to take a picture inside the airport and realized I didn't have my phone. And at that moment, it hit me and I remembered that I had left it on the plane. And to top it off, that plane was headed to Venezuela. So if I didn't run to get my phone, my poor phone was going to end up in Venezuela. So I ran as fast as I could, and luckily in the end the plane was still connected to the jet bridge. Otherwise my parents would have killed me.
Ah, well, goodbye, master.
One time when I was 9 years old, we were in the classroom and my friend El Panzas had a guy named Chepe fall on top of him, and Chepe weighed about 350 pounds. Because the fat man was fixing the classroom's air conditioning, so at one point the ladder that Mr. Chepe was standing on lost a screw. And I can clearly see in 8K how the janitor falls on top of Panzas, who was standing near a table and got pinned against it. Poor Panzas was left lying on the floor like this. And in the end, Mr. Chepe stands up like nothing happened and says, "Teacher, I think I squashed a kid. The good thing is he's chubby like me."
Call the police! They're killing me!
One time I got scammed really badly because I thought I had bought the coolest Ben 10 watch online, or at least that's what I believed. So I waited for it with more excitement than a kid on Christmas. And when it finally arrived, I opened the box like it was a lost treasure and it was just a toy watch with weird little Ben 10 drawings on it. And me, all traumatized, thinking maybe it would turn into the Omnitrix. But no, it was actually a piece of plastic junk that didn't even work, so I got scammed. They really broke my heart, and now my little cousin Tizok uses it all happy. By the way, what I have on my hat is my latest subscriber, Reina Lucia Vilches Canelon, so if you want to appear on my head, subscribe. Once when the Wolverine and Deadpool movie came out, my cousins threw away 2,000 pesos just on tickets. Because on the day of the show they were really excited, but they forgot they were just kids and showed up all happy. The guy at the theater said, "Let me see your IDs, kids," leaving them wondering if it was some kind of dirty joke. So they weren't allowed in, and that's it. The 28 kids were left crying outside the theater. And my girlfriend and I did get in, but we felt bad for my cousins, so we made a video call so they could watch a little bit, until a worker caught us and kicked us out too. Subscribe if you've ever been left outside the theater. Once when I was in middle school, we had a friend we called Cauliflower who was super dirty, because one day my friends and I saw his nails and they were super black. So one time my buddy El Kalaka asked him, "Hey Cole, why are your nails always so black, man?" And then out of nowhere, without any shame, he tells us all, "Oh, it's because I scratch my butt a lot and I hardly ever shower." And actually my friend Jorge was eating his breakfast, poor guy. And from the disgust, he threw up his ham sandwich that Coli had touched. And in the end, Cauliflower says, "Let's see if it still smells." Sniff, sniff, and the filthy guy started biting his nails to clean them according to him, because he said they did smell. Once, when I was 15 years old, one of my classmates was almost eaten by crocodiles because my whole class went to a park that had a lake with crocodiles. It was for our natural science class. But then once we got there, my classmate Cocodrilin went over. Without asking the teachers or caring, he dove into the lake without knowing what was in the water. When the teacher saw him, she said,
"Julian, get out! There are crocodiles!"
And Julian, all scared, swam out faster than his uncle ever could. And luckily there weren't any crocodiles in that area, because if there had been... One time when I was at the supermarket with my family, all the lights went out at the same time and a voice said, "Close the doors, there's an animal on the loose." And my grandma Chona screamed,
"It's a tiger! I saw it on Facebook!"
But my little cousin Tizok got on a little cart saying, "I'll handle the evacuation." Meanwhile, my mom was grabbing hams in case we made it out alive. Then a security guard started running, everyone was screaming, a lady even fainted, and in the end, the animal on the loose was a half-kilo chihuahua named Pepe. So since that day, we call the supermarket African Chedraui Safari. One time, my math teacher bumped up my grade because I was dumb and had failed his class since I hadn't studied. So the teacher gives me the exam and my final grade and tells me that I failed. So I begged him and said, "No, teacher, give me a chance."
And he told me that if I checked the exam and found a mistake where he graded me wrong, he would pass me.
So I ran and went to look for the brainiac of the class, and I kind of checked it, and sure enough, my exam was a disaster. So I grabbed the correction fluid and erased one of my wrong answers and marked it as correct. But the teacher obviously noticed and just stared at me and said, "Oh, Manuel, well, you can go home." And in the end, as a thank you, I gave him a watch worth $3,500, and he said, "Thanks, Manuel, but study, dummy. Miracles get tired too."
I have no choice.
Once when they held a Christmas fair in middle school, someone shouted, "Teacher, Santa's fainting because they saw steam coming out of the costume." But as soon as that was said, all the kids went into Titanic mode, screaming chaos. Panzas dropped his tamale and the prefect started ordering code red, code red. Then they go up to poor Santa, already lying on the ground, and it was Cachette, sweating like a human microwave because he was wearing a jacket, a sweater, and the costume on top. And that day they took away his role as Santa and brought in a new official character, the cool reindeer. One time when I was in middle school, my buddy Tripas whispered to me, "Do you want to see something really insane?" And like an idiot, I said yes. But the guy pulls out a little bag with something black in it and whispers to me, "It's a human finger." So I turned paler than convenience store bread. I broke out in a cold sweat and said, "Tripas, where did you get that?" Then the sicko throws it into my hand and I screamed so loud that I knocked over my desk, my friend Roberta's pencil case, and almost the teacher. And in the end, it was just a rotten banana. Since that day, whenever Tripas tells me, "Look at this," I run. Once in elementary school, my friend Chuchito traumatized the whole school and became a legend.
Because whenever he used the bathroom, he'd drop his pants to his ankles at the urinal.
But he did it with a calmness that was scary, as if he were at home watering the plants. So one day I ran into the bathroom because my stomach was about to explode, and boom, there was Chuchito with his back to me, as radiant as always. So I screamed, "My eyes, my eyes!" And the worst part is that since that day, going to the bathroom wasn't safe. Now we all went in scared. My eyes!
My eyes! My eyes!
Once I became the biggest liar in the world because I promised I would never get angry playing video games again. But my words lasted exactly half a match because I was playing Fortnite, and thanks to my friend Kalaka, I got killed. And to top it off, I see Panzas shooting at a rock thinking it was an enemy. And then my buddy Chupon was making fun of me, so I flew into a rage. I threw the controller and yelled at them,
"I don't want to be your friend anymore."
And I left the group, but then I regretted it. I apologized to them, promised to change, and they accepted me. But the bad thing is that we lost again like total bots, but now with hugs.
One more and you're dead.
One time I caused a problem at a restaurant because I thought their soap didn't work, but actually it was just me being stupid because I had just finished eating. And like a real man, I ended up with my whole mouth and hands dirty. So I went to the bathroom to wash up. I grabbed what I thought was soap, but it was transparent, and I started rubbing my hands, but it wouldn't lather, and I kept at it for 5 minutes. So I said, these people at the restaurant are trying to make a fool out of me. And I went to the manager and said, sir, that soap doesn't work. Then he says, let me see. And then he realizes that what I was washing my hands with was hand sanitizer and not soap, because the soap was on the other side. One time my parents bought me an Xbox and a Kinect. Because I was overweight and I had an event in Mexico City and they had already bought me the clothes, but since I was overweight they didn't fit me, so they wanted me to exercise with the Kinect. So I got really disciplined and even said, the girls won't even recognize me, and I tried on the clothes here in my city and they did fit me. But when I traveled to Mexico City, I tried to put them on, and I was already swollen because Mexico City is a high altitude city. And that made me swell up, and because of that I got traumatized about my weight, and I told my parents I'm a fat pig about to give birth. One time my brother Rodilla was warning me that my dog Mickey pees a lot because he had peed on his bed and almost pooped on it. But I was going to let him stay on my bed because I thought to myself, poor thing, he must be bored of being outside all day. But while my brother was telling me all that, Mickey had already gotten on the bed with my girlfriend. So while my brother was telling me everything, Mickey was already peeing on my bed, right on my pillow. And my girlfriend comes in yelling,
He already peed, and right on your pillow.
And I said, damn it, Mickey, I'll give you up for adoption to a Chinese guy so he can make soup out of you.
At that moment, Zell felt true terror.
Once when I was in middle school, I peed in my brand new school uniform on the first day of classes because I didn't want to go. And my dad gave me a beating because I had been on vacation for almost 2 months straight. So my body had already gotten used to being lazy and I liked spending all night playing. So the night before Monday, I said, I have to go to school tomorrow. What a drag. I think I'm going to pee my pants so I don't have to go. So that's what I did. But it didn't turn out like I expected, because even so, my dad still sent me to school beaten up and soaked in pee. Phil.
You're such a jerk.
One time my grandpa Tornillo got hit with a hammer like 20 times, he says, because one day they had to operate on his knee since it was bad. So when he went to the operating room, he says that during the operation, while he was sedated, they gave him like 20 talegazos in the knee to get the nails into the bone so he could walk properly. But I didn't know what talegazos were, so I asked Grandpa Tornillo, what are talegazos? And he says to me, this, son. And he gives me a knock on the head, according to him, to give me a demonstration so I would understand better. But in the end, even though they gave him 20 hits, he didn't walk well. Once, a crazy teacher in elementary school used to insult me and the whole class because according to her, we behaved badly. So every time we did something she didn't like, she would say, you're a bunch of freeloaders. And honestly, all my classmates who were between 10 and 11 years old didn't know what the heck a freeloader was. Until one day my buddy Simba looked up what it was, and he answered the teacher right in front of the whole class.
Well, you're a pathetic tick.
And the whole class and I started laughing at what he said. And the teacher felt so offended that she started crying, the dummy.
Oh my god, this is going to be epic, guys.
Once when I was 8 years old, I was really scared that some worms would lay eggs in my skin and they'd hatch inside me. And people thought I was crazy because I had gone to see a really weird movie with my parents. Actually, the movie was for ages 18 and up, and now I understand why. But the weird thing is, I don't know how the heck I managed to get into the theater. I don't know if my parents didn't read that it was rated 18 or if the person at the ticket booth just didn't care and wanted to traumatize me. So after leaving the movie, I started stomping on the ground non-stop because in the movie the worms were invisible and they were on the floor. So people kept staring at me weird like I had poop on my face. One time my friend Chupon ate a tick off a dirty street dog because that guy would literally do anything you told him to. So one day we were hanging out there on the street with the rest of the guys, but then we saw a really dirty dog and we said, Chupon, let's see if you really dare to do anything. Eat a tick off that little dog, and the crazy guy, without saying a word, goes to his house to get some ham to lure the dog over. And then he came back, gave it to the dog and took off the tick. Then he goes and says, Bon appetit. Seriously, that guy is alive by the grace of the Holy Spirit.
Hey, I'm wild. I'm really crazy. I'm wild. I'm a crazy guy.
I'm a criminal. Mama, I'm a criminal. Mama, I'm a criminal. Mama,